God's purpose for our problems, number one, is to develop us. Will you look at your neighbor and share that with them? Say, neighbor, God's purpose for our problems is to develop us. Look at the text, verse 2 and 3. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. God wants to develop us. James makes it very clear that God's purpose for our problems is to not only work on us, but to develop us as well. In other words, we are not as grown as we think we are. James says, no, there is still some work that can be done in your life. There is still some development that can come through your life. There is still some work to be done on your spiritual development. In other words, I want you, when you get a chance and you go to the bookstore, as most of you frequent the bookstores quite often, I want you to find the Bible that's written by Eugene Peterson entitled The Message Bible. It's a good Bible for you to have in your library. It's a good Bible for you to have at your disposal. Eugene Peterson describes this verse in this way. He declares, God is trying to make sure we are not deficient in any way. Oh, you didn't shout there. Maybe because deficient is what? Lacking a certain quality. So in other words, Peterson suggests that James is telling us that God wants to make sure that we are not deficient in who God has created us to be. So sometimes God sends problems to make sure we are not lacking in the qualities that we need in our lives. In other words, God wants us well developed. Therefore, James says trials should be faced with an attitude of joyfulness, not an attitude of misery, not an attitude of sadness. But he says, consider it pure joy. He does not declare, consider it pure sadness. He says, consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds. Now, really, here's my problem with the text, Dr. Claiborne. I like James, but I got a problem with James now. Because he says, I can understand if he declared, consider it pure joy if you face trial and tribulation. But he says, no, of many kinds. Oh, okay. In other words, like my mother would once say, I can handle it if it's just one problem. But when it's one thing after another and after another, sometimes it snatches my joy away. But James says, no, consider it pure joy. Watch the language of the text. Watch the grammatical movement of the text. He says, whenever you face trials of many kinds. That's plural. Because if James meant one trial, he would have put an apostrophe before that S. But he said trials. If he meant just of one kind, he would have put an apostrophe before the S. But he says of many kinds, which means we ought to consider it joy, although things are piling up on us and problems are stacking up on us spiritually. But yet, because of our confidence and faith in God, we ought to consider it pure joy, because we know God is still after development and not to harm us. Problems should not be seen as punishment or a curse or as calamity. And that's why I'm concerned theologically about this new prosperity gospel that declares if you don't have a nice home and drive a nice car and have plenty of money in the bank, then there must be something wrong with your relationship with God. That's not what James says. James says you can have a good relationship with God and still face trials of many kinds. Do I have a witness in here? James says you can pray all you want, but your prayer ought to cause you to consider it pure joy when you face problems of many kinds. You know, my son, y'all know, was just born a couple of days ago, and I established a relationship with him from day one. I would begin to talk to him, especially when I figured out he was a boy. We would talk every morning, every evening, make my wife put the phone to her stomach. I need to talk to my son. And so I talked to him throughout her process of the pregnancy. And she, as you know, women that have given birth, as you know, you go to the doctor every month, but the closer you get to giving birth, you not only go every month, but you go every week. And so even in the process of going every week, what blew my mind is how the doctor was able to take a tape measurement and predict the development of this child. He was able to stretch the measurement over the child and predict to my wife, I need to induce you, because if this child stays inside of you for the full term, he will be almost too much to bear. He says, I predict if I take him out 2 weeks early, he should be, and he looked at the measurement, somewhere around 7 pounds. And I said, wow, throughout that development, I just kept on talking to the child. And the whole time he was developing from a small little inside the womb, and then he started to grow and develop. And then when he got to this world, guess what the first thing he did when he came through the womb? He hollered. Ah! Ah! Baby went to crying. I said, hold it, boy. Hold it. Daddy's in the room. Everything's gonna be all right. Believe it or not, ask my wife when she get here, the baby closed his mouth. In other words, he recognized the voice even in the midst of the pain of coming through the birth canal. When he got out, he heard a familiar voice. What are you trying to say, Reverend? When God has a relationship with you and you are being developed, you can holler all you want and God will tell you, hush your mouth, God is still on your side. Do I have a witness in here that's had to holler sometime, but you heard God say, peace, be still? God wants to develop us. When God is developing you, he's basically creating within you steadfastness, perseverance, and endurance. James really blesses my soul. If you really internalize what he's saying, he's literally suggesting that a person that is not fully developed has a hard time getting through trials. Person that's not fully developed has a hard time getting over stuff. I'm going somewhere. A person that's not fully developed has a hard time putting some stuff behind them. And might I suggest on this morning, this afternoon at 12:09, that we got a lot of saved folk, but they ain't fully developed. Because some of them still got attitudes with you, and some happened 20 years ago. That's an indication they ain't fully developed. When you are fully developed, yes, they may have hurt you, but because of your developmental process, you are able to transition something out of your life. I like looking at websites. I mean, I'm telling you, I like perusing websites. I mean, like Apple and other churches and marketing. I like looking at their websites. I'm looking because I'm trying to steal something. In the scholastic arena, they say if I give them credit the first time, I'm really not stealing because I've given them credit. I don't have to give them credit after that. So I'm looking at the website, especially Apple with this new iPhone 4S. I thought they was through with the iPhone 4 and the 3 and all that. Now they got this 4S and the iPad. And I like watching because they have such wonderful marketing skills. And I tried, Sister Natalie, I try to copy some of their marketing skills so that we can put them in the life of the church and begin to market the church. Like they market this iPhone 4S. They marketed so well that they sold out before the phone even got to the store. And I'm trying to figure out how to market St. James so that it's packed before church service even starts. And so, but in the process of watching Bancola, this website, every now and then I get to a page and it really raises my festivity level. That's my upsetness, and it raises my blood pressure because I'm so excited about looking at it. I used to say from the pulpit, I become pissed off, but Mama say don't use that word, such a nasty, low-down word. And then I say, well, here's a more intellectual word, my festivity level. She said, no, that still means you're pissed. The suffix of it, the prefix is pissed, and so it still amounts to the same. You're upset. Just say you're upset. Can I preach it like I feel it? I didn't preach to y'all last week, so it's all built up in me. So I get to the website, Sister Vesta, and the thing won't come up. I get angry because I'm thinking I'm going to see a product. And guess what comes across the screen? Under construction. Check back later. I said, I didn't want to check back later. I come to see it now. Then I hit the refresh button up there, and it says under construction. Check back later. And the computer started preaching to me. It told me when problems come, when God is developing you, you are under construction. And folk look at you now while you're under construction, but when they check back later, they don't see the same person that they saw before you went under construction. Can anybody thank God that I'm still under development? I'm still under construction.